All right, Andy, thank you for staying on for a little bit of one-on-one. I think that was so interesting, and it's so cool to see both Tracy and your perspective, your journeys. And I know when we're working with different companies all across the world, they're all on different journeys, but they're all trying to get there, right? These AI, ML technologies are a little bit of interesting for companies because we have so many companies just today that said, we're not using AI, ML. But this is the future. This is where we're going. So thank you for joining us today. I can't wait to hear more about what you're doing and how you're using AI and ML. Can you give us a little bit more background into the company that you started?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the one thing that I wanted to point out about the session that Tracy and I just did is that you have Kimberly-Clark, which is this huge company. And you have Othot, which is, a small but growing company. And yet we speak the same language. We understand the same issues. We see the same vision. That to me is amazing when you have a technology like that and you can have people coming from two completely different perspectives, yet speak the same language. So I find that exciting. But yeah, so I'm a co-founder of Othot. Along with my other two co-founders, we started the company in 2014. And yes, advanced analytics, AI, ML was around, but people were still really trying to understand how to use it to make a difference in their organization. And, so we looked at finance, and finance has so much data, and they're so good at algorithms, and they're so good at and they have the resources necessary. And you look at retail, and they were doing the same. And my co-founders and I sat down one day and said, okay, how do industries that don't have the experience or the money or the assets, how do they take advantage of these outcomes that you can get with AI and machine learning, but they just can't get, they haven't started yet. And so that was the whole idea around Othot. Othot, by the way, meaning O for original, thought for thought. So we were trying to have original thoughts about how to do this. And so we decided to find a way to democratize predictive analytics, which meant how do we create a web-based technology that can constantly feed data in, has an engine that's constantly repredicting, and then it's answering a particular question that requires a prediction, and it answers that in a real-time or near real-time basis. So, and then when we looked across industries, we saw higher education as a very ripe opportunity, largely because it's a industry that's in constant movement, constant change, right? So the way that students are changing all the time, they currently use consultants to solve a lot of the problems in addition to their internal resources, but have not really adopted that AI or machine learning. And so we said, this is a great place to go. And we started our journey down that path.
That's so cool. And I love predictive analytics. I mean, we use it all the time for marketing, for our customers on their marketing plans. How can you start to predict models? How can you predict creative? What are people going to adapt to? What are they going to respond to? So it's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about who your customer is? Is it the college, university, or is it the student?
Yeah, no, our customer is the college and the university. And so, as we talked about in the last session, really, as we look at the future of education, it's all about personalization ultimately, right? So is the individual student getting the outcome that they're looking for at the right price? And are they getting a great job? And are they continuing to learn throughout their life? Are they lifelong learners? So that when you think about that journey of that individual, that's what they want. At the other end, universities want to provide that to them. So they want to find the students that are going to thrive at their university at the right price, that are going to do so well at school that they get great jobs and are going to want to give back. So we target the universities and colleges and say, we can give you a platform that can maximize, optimize that relationship all along that student life cycle so that both sides win. And so, yes, we focus on the enrollment professionals, the student affairs professionals, the alumni engagement professionals, development. That's who we focus on.
That's so interesting. So we actually had Marcus, who is a department of the head at MIT. We also had other speakers from other industries, colleges. Do you find that it's hard for these industries to adopt AI and ML in what you're working on?
Yeah, I think it's like any change management process. So when you're really changing how people make decisions, and really that's what we're talking about, is making data-informed decisions, better decision making. And where they're used to either accumulating the data themselves, analyzing, and then making decisions, or hiring consultants to help them do that. And you still need both, by the way. It's not saying that we're eliminating that, but we're putting power behind that, right? So we're putting the power of AI that will take all that data and that will do all that upfront work and make the initial predictions and then suggest a whole bunch of prescriptions. So it's complementary to humans, right? And I think that's sometimes what we forget, or what people don't understand, is that AI is not a replacement, it's complementary, right? It gives us the ability to make better decisions, to be more creative, to use, what we want to use in our daily jobs is making a difference, not necessarily spending all our time accumulating data.
Wow, that's so exciting. And so when you're talking about sharing this data with a college of who the right student is it a student that has applied, or is it a student that just might be on Facebook somewhere and you're like, hey, these students would be great for your university or college?
Okay, yeah, so just to set it up a little bit better. So all the data, so we are the platform. Each individual university is using the platform to facilitate that process from inquiry all the way through enrollment and beyond. So they feed their data. So this could be people that are coming and visiting their website, or they're buying names from a particular source, or somebody fills out a common app. It does not matter. As soon as an individual touches the university, their data starts in the platform. They are born into the platform. And then that way, so and as we learn, and this is a really big impact of ML, we're constantly learning about that individual's journey. We may not even know who they are the first time that they come to our website, right? But when they reveal themselves, when they become an applicant, all of a sudden all that data says, oh, that's who you were. And all of a sudden you have this full 365 view of that individual. So it is, anywhere along that life cycle. But it is the university that is actually using the platform like it is their own platform. It's distinct for every institution.
That's got to be so powerful for the university. I know one of my selling points into the university that I chose was actually they gave me a free t-shirt. I said, whichever of these 4 universities give me a free t-shirt, I'm going to go there. And they made a lot of money from that one free t-shirt.
That's really funny.
Paid off my college, so I'm so excited about that.
That is really cool. So if that university captured the fact that it gave you a t-shirt, and let's say that there's 1,000 people that look like you and that got that t-shirt, and along with your other variables, which are very similar, and if 70% of you enrolled, then you'd know that the likelihood is 70%. Now, what we could do is say, okay, what the machine does for us that we don't have to do is when somebody else comes into our funnel that looks like you, it's like, oh, send that person a t-shirt, right? Because that's going to increase the probability because they're behaving like you. They have similar data points as you. And that's what, if you set it up correctly, that's what a platform, an AI platform can do for you, is as soon as somebody comes into your funnel, says, okay, who does that person look like? How are they behaving similarly? Oh, how do we maximize the outcome? Because here's what the 1,000 people that came before you did. that make sense?
That's so great.
No.
Love that. You're right. You have to start to track it, right? If they should really start tracking that. It's interesting. Out of that experience, that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago that I had that experience. When we actually are talking with customers, we have mugs, coffee mugs, and we give those coffee mugs at the end of our meetings. And those actually have really helped in our closing of deals. Just one little thing that cost our team maybe $4, $5 makes a huge impact. So you're right. How do you start to track those?
Right. And I mean, what you're talking about is a particular behavior that you have that was well accepted by the other individuals, but it signifies relationship, right? So, and because it's a proxy for something else, and it says, oh, okay, these are relationship people, and that's a lot of the fun of what we do too, is to kind of figure out, okay, well, why? Why is that particular data point, or what's going on? Why are we seeing this pattern? And if you're intellectually curious, like our people are, it's such a fun job to be in, because you can constantly say, I want to know why that's happening. Sometimes you can figure it out and sometimes you can't.
Yeah. And when you're working with these universities, colleges, do you see pushback at all? Are you facing them at pushing the technology away?
I don't think as much as it is pushing it away. It's wanting to understand what it means. So it's are they ready now, right? So, and they want to understand how it's different from what they're currently doing. And so I think that as opposed to pushback, it's more about, tell me how I integrate this, like anything, a new technology, new solution. How do I integrate it into my workflow now? So, because this is different. It's not like I'm going from one CRM to another CRM, right? It is, I am inserting something that's going to change the way I make decisions in a good way. So how does that happen? So I don't think most people that we talk to see the inevitability. They just want to know, okay, how do I do it?
Right. And is there any way that Orthot is using AI and ML differently? I mean, we heard many different examples today on how others are using it. How are you using it, and is it any different than some of the others that you've?
Yep, just for one, it's OThought, just so we can get that out there. So I would say, we start with the question, right? So I think we talked a little bit about this in the last session. So we really want to understand what it is that the university college is trying to solve. Is it, do I want to increase my enrollment? Do I want to increase NTR, net tuition revenue? And then we provide two things I think that are very unique to OThought. One is explainable AI. And that means that you can actually understand what's behind the predictions. It's not a black box. So you can actually see the waterfall of all the variables that's impacting that individual to have the prediction that they do. And then we are providing prescriptions, real prescriptions to say, okay, here's the 3 actions that you can take to maximize the probability that that individual is going to enroll, or that individual is going to persist or graduate or get a job, whatever it might be. It's actually providing these ideas about actions that you can take. So those would be the I think that are very unique to what we do.
That's great. We do have a question from one of our attendees. How are you playing a role in helping colleges recruit students and shift to virtual or hybrid learning? I mean, right now, we've seen this huge switch to online learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a great question. So there's 2 pieces to that. One is sort of as students go through the recruiting process, it's been completely upended because you can't visit a campus, or you couldn't, especially in late spring, early summer. So what you're doing is you're looking at behavior of those students. So are they actually signing up to virtual webinars? Are they attending? So you start to learn about a new pattern of behavior that the students are having. and you want to see, and where's the aberration? So you can see that there's certain students, oh, they look like they're going to enroll, and they eventually did. They deposited their money. But you have other students that typically look like they would have enrolled, but they didn't, or they didn't deposit. Why is that? And what you start to see, what the platform told us was, oh, they're far away. They were, so far away from the campus that they, their need, their economic need is higher. So it's learning about these variables that give us the indication that we have to treat them differently. So it's giving us that intelligence to make a better decision. Same way with online learning. Are people engaged? Do we see people on, in their classrooms, on their LMS, on their whatever? Where are the aberrations from what we would expect? And when we see that, what we can do is go contact those individuals and make sure that we're taking care of them. We're seeing behavior that doesn't make sense. So maybe they have a need, maybe they're in need of money, or maybe they're having trouble in school or whatever. We're highlighting, or the platform is highlighting for our schools, who to go after and who to help.
That's great. And are you gathering data points from these students even after they select a college?
Yeah, constantly. Yeah, because so just because you deposit doesn't mean that you're going to show up in the fall, right? So there's a whole set of behaviors that happened over the summer, because now you'll see, there's a lot of students or parents or whoever that'll deposit at multiple schools. So is that deposit really a deposit, right? So we have to watch behavior. What is a normal behavior of a student that's actually going to show up in the fall? And we call that in the industry melt, right? We want to avoid summer melt. So if we're seeing an aberration of behavior from what we could expect, we can reach out. Maybe it's a money issue. Maybe it's a transportation issue. Maybe it's, a food issue, a food insecurity issue. How do we address the need so that we don't let that student melt and they do show up in the fall? So that's just one example.
Yeah, this is so interesting because I do a lot of hiring and I do a lot of interviewing with new graduates, right out of school. It would be so interesting to have this predictive model of, will this student that just graduate, will they be a good fit? And what company would they be a good fit for? It would be so interesting to kind of keep that pattern going. Is that something that you're thinking about or possible?
Yeah, so one of our most innovative partners, customers, the long-term vision is they want to produce students that will fit a particular industry and really be sort of the leaders in that industry with a particular type of competency. And so ultimately, so we're starting with sort of how do we increase retention graduation rates, but then it'll be what are the experiences, the classwork, et cetera, that allow us to understand who's successful at all these companies in this particular industry. So that not only are we suggesting to the students, if you want to go into this particular industry, here's what you need to do, but that the school itself can modify its curriculum and experiences that maximize the probability that those individuals are going to go get jobs in that industry or with those groups of companies or whatever. That's where you start to really streamline into industry and where all this connects. So yeah, it's a great question. It's right on the money for what the future could look like.
Wow, that makes me super exciting. I love that. So when that's there, I'm signing up. And I know our CEO and many other companies out there will want that data. So awesome. One of the things that I love that you talk about is leading with questions that matter, or the problem that you're having trying to solve, and then feed it with data. Tell us more about this approach that you talk about.
Yeah, it's probably one of the areas that surprises me the most, just generally in the industry, not necessarily in our industry in higher education, but everybody wants to start with the data. I have all this data, we're accumulating more data. What does the data tell us? What does the data tell us? And the first thing that I always try to do is reorient people to, well, what problem are you trying to solve, or what are you trying to do? So and I think this comes back to some of my consulting origins, right? Which is, you don't try and solve a problem unless you really understand the problem. And because if you try and solve the problem, with models first or solutions first, you're going to miss the mark. So we developed this process at OTHOT, actually, called high impact question, which is that you spend an inordinate amount of time up front in understanding what it is that the customer is trying to solve. And you define every word. You boil that down into a sentence that's digestible, and then every single word within that sentence is defined. So that when you're building the models and you're seeing the outcome, that it ties exactly back to where you started. So that's a general sense of what a HIQ, high impact question, means.
That's great. Thank you. And what's your background? Is it software? Are you a data scientist? What's your background?
Yeah, so I'm a self-made data scientist. I'm a self-made chemist. I'm a self-made, my background is generally business, but I love to learn about new subjects, and I immerse myself into whatever the business is that I'm currently involved with. And I think it's that immersion and that desire to have a deep understanding. I feel like I can see algorithms and understand performance. And if I can do that, I can talk at any level. No, maybe not at the level of our head of data science, but I truly understand. I think that's one of the keys, is to understanding what it is that these algorithms, these machine learning algorithms, AI, are actually doing under the hood, that enables us to explain it well to our customers.
And that's so interesting. And it's probably out of those business needs that you're trying to figure out, what's the solution? How do I get to these different solutions? And so it gets you into that world of AI, ML, which can help that productivity. It can give you the data points that you're looking for. Do you find that your background has helped, and does it give you a different perspective?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You have to be able to sort of look beyond just what the technical answer is. There's a ton of examples out there of people focusing on building models that don't necessarily solve a problem. So I think that you've got to lift yourself back out, and being a generalist. I think sometimes that's deeply inquisitive, and I think that's the thing, that you have to have that intellectual curiosity, that inquisitiveness, to really understand why things are working the way they are, or how you can make them better. So it's almost that inventor, sort of tinkering, sort of want to understand type of personality that enables us to see differently, see the problem differently, see the solution differently, and being able to communicate that to either your customer or your boss or whoever it might be. And that's a tough thing to teach, I think. But the more that we can think about using these technologies in general sense, rather than a specific output of an algorithm, I think we'll see a wider spread adoption.
Yeah, that's so important. And one of the things following up on that is, so you built a lot of this using interns or students from Pitt, correct?
Yeah.
And they were part of the business program?
Yeah, they were part of the business program. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually we see customer computer science or software when it comes to many of these software-related startups. Why did you choose the business program?
Well, a couple reasons. Well, I should say, there's we had a ton of students from Pitt, but we also had students from CMU and students from Point Park and Robert Morris around Pittsburgh. But the Pitt students that are focused on business and analytics, they have a left and right brain capacity to them, right? So they love numbers, they love quant, but they love to tell a story, and they're pragmatic. And so when we started the analytics program at Pitt, we wanted them to have programming experience, data mining experience, database management experience, to couple along with whatever they were majoring in. So when you have both those perspectives, and you actually can code, it's a different animal. They see things differently. They can understand data in ways that somebody who's just on the computer science or just on the business side can't see. They got this beautiful marriage of those two things together. So that's that happens by experiment, and it worked out. And many of them work at OTHOT now, and many of them went off to consulting jobs and came back and work at OTHOT. So we're blessed with that level of talent.
Those are great stories. Thank you. And so we do have a lot of students that watch our Tech Talk videos and some that are on today. What are some of the recommendations that you would give them as they're looking into the AI, ML fields, education-wise?
Yeah, so it all depends on sort of what, if you're in a non-technical major, go get your minor in computer science, right? So learn how to code, learn Python, right? Learn R, learn what an algorithm, build your algorithms. I think I can't stress that enough. And I always tell students, it's because everybody needs to be able to speak the same language. And so if you can't speak the language of people who want to code, as their primary profession or build algorithms, if you can't communicate, you're never going to get the value out. Same concept if you're very technically oriented. You need to feed that other side of your brain, and you need to learn how to communicate. You need to take some business classes, some economics classes. And in both of those groups together need to understand behavioral economics, right? So why people behave the way that they do, because people make decisions, they behave a certain way for certain reasons, not because necessarily the demographics of who they are, but they behave in a certain way because what motivates them or what interests them. So both of those groups need to understand more behavioral economics.
That is some great advice. So thank you so much. Last question. What would be that recommendation to, say, a hiring manager or a CEO when it comes to possibly hiring?
Hiring in general?
Hiring those that can help them through AI, ML.
Yeah, so I think it's McKinsey who has termed this phrase, these analytics translators. And these are people who can span across an organization and understand business problems, but they can understand the data and they can understand the algorithms. So they are worth their weight in diamonds. I mean, it is just that ability to have the domain expertise, but can speak the technical language, but understand the business problems. They exist. There's not a lot of them out there. And if you can't hire them, build a program inside your organization to develop those skill sets. Because those are the individuals, like Tracy was saying in the last section, those are the individuals that are going to make a difference in your organization.
100%. Totally agree with that. So thank you so much. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. If you could just provide us how people can connect with you.
Sure. So you can find me at LinkedIn. Probably easiest to go to Andy Hanna at OTHOT. Love to connect with anybody. You can also reach me at awhanna@othot.com, and Hanna has an H on the end of it. So those are probably the two best ways to find me.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. This has been a great fun, and really appreciate being part of it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Great. What an awesome jam-packed day we've had. I think it's been super exciting to hear what both Andy and Tracy just talked about. I mean, we hear it every day when we're working with customers, and hopefully everyone here is getting a lot of great information.